Whew. All right. What's up, everybody? I'm Dr. Weber, and today we are going to talk about adapted physical activity lesson planning in the group setting with minimal equipment. Okay, so the equipment I'm talking about is just some cones, some mats, and a radio that hooks up to Bluetooth. So that's all we have. All right. So imagine a situation where that's all you have. You have a big gym, okay, a big space, could be outdoors, indoors. You have only cones, mats, and a radio. So what are you going to do? How are you going to plan a camp that is 3 days long, okay? And you're going to be meeting some of the same participants each week. How are you going to structure that camp to make sure you're including everyone and you're making sure that it's dynamic enough to where people are interested in the content, okay? So how we're going to format that is we're going to teach yoga or breathing and stretching and motor control exercises on the mats to start the class. We're going to do low impact, low stress stretches and mobility exercises that include people that utilize wheelchairs and without. Then we will start to do some more dynamic movements to get the blood flowing, to really look at locomotor patterns to see if people can skip, hop, jump, that type of thing. And if not, what type of movements can they do upper body wise that show that they can either use explosive forces. So if it's not jumping, maybe it's a med ball push, or they're able to pull a rope, that type of thing. So making sure that we're adapting it for people that utilize wheelchairs. So after our dynamic warm-up, what we're going to do after our dynamic warm-up is start our first fun activity. So we're going to think of either dancing or kickboxing, or we can go kickboxing, dance in whatever order you'd like. Kickboxing is really a fun activity because you can use upper body and lower body exercises, and same with dance. You can use upper body and lower body dance moves. Okay. Now, I'm not the best dance teacher, but my students are. So we allow them to play a game called Freeze Dance, where we take a student with a disability and we'll have them lead the class, and everyone imitates them for about a minute. And then when the music stops, everyone freezes, and then that student chooses a new dancer, and it's called Freeze Dance. For kickboxing, I'll typically model what I want the students to do in a group fitness type of setting. And so most of our class will be in a group fitness type setting. So starting the class with a yoga type of class or mobility class, then moving into more dynamic movements, which are be cross court movements or moving in space like skipping and hopping and running. And then we'll move into maybe some power exercises or kickboxing. We can sub our power exercises for kickboxing, or we could just add our explosive movements in our dance. So making sure that we do something that's a little bit explosive after our warm-up to really make sure that we're training for power. And then after either yoga or after kickboxing and dance, then we'll play a group cooperative game with limited equipment. So we'll just have cones and a radio. So you'll have to think of maybe games like sharks and minnows, red light, green light, maybe creating obstacle courses or zigzag or curve patterns with the cones. And you have to be really creative on games that you can play with just minimal equipment. Okay, so we're going to go over how to plan an adaptive physical activity lesson plan in a group setting. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the induction. So the set induction is basically the introduction of the class. You're going to introduce what we're going to be learning for the day. So for example, hey everybody, I'm Dr. Weber. I'm super excited to see everybody. It is the first day of camp, and today we are going to first warm up our body on the mats. Then we're going to perform some kickboxing exercises, and then we're going to do a little bit of dance. And then after that, we have a sharks and minnows game, followed by a game called construction destruction with the cones. Now we're going to go ahead and meet your mentors. Go ahead and ask each other a couple questions, and go ahead and get to know each other, and maybe ask them what their favorite food is or their favorite movie is. All right, go ahead. boom, you have the students start engaging with their mentors or mentees with their mentors, or you get the students to interact with each other. Regardless, you get some camaraderie, some social interaction going. You get to know their favorite food, and maybe you ask them at the end of the lesson, like, hey, what's your buddy's favorite food, or what's their favorite movie, whatever it was, just to see if they remembered. Okay. Then after we set the induction and get people kind of talking and maybe ask them questions, have you ever has anyone ever performed kickboxing? Has anyone ever done a stretch class before? Has anyone ever gone to a dance class? And then they might raise their hand. You might ask them some questions. So set induction is when you're kind of getting them familiar with what you're about to teach them. Okay, these are the student learning outcomes that you are addressing that are tied to national and state standards. Okay, but first what we do is our set induction. The second thing we're going to do is our warm-up. And we talked about what our warm-up is going to consist of. It's going to start with breathing, stretching. We have motor control or balance. We're going to have some dynamic stretching in here as well. Dynamic stretching can be anything from skipping to squats to push-ups. It could be any type of fitness exercise that you want to perform here. Okay, and then we're going to have your kickboxing will be 3. Okay, 4 will be your dance. 5 will be your cooperative game. And then 6 is going to be your discussion and closure. So making sure that you get them talking again to each other, you ask them questions, and then you have some type of closure activity. So maybe that's just a circle stretch, what I like to do. Okay. And you have to ask yourself, well, how long is each component going to take? So that set induction is going to be anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, you don't want to keep that too long. Okay, the second thing is our warm-up. This is going to be about anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes. Okay. Then we have our kickboxing and dance. Each of these components could take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes each. Our cooperative game, we want to leave about 10 minutes for, and then our ending closure activity, anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, and we're going to have some water breaks in between each session here, so that we're making sure that they are hydrated throughout, because a lot of times people forget to drink their water. So making sure you have water breaks in between each activity. So this is going to be about 60 minutes. Okay, you can give or take some minutes and formulate that however you want. So generally the warm-up is going to be about 20 minutes. Okay, generally the kickboxing is going to be about 10 minutes. So if we went 20, 30, 40, 50, that leaves us with about 10 minutes, okay, which can be added into any of these activities, can be added. Obviously, you don't want to spend too much time on our discussion or closure or our set induction. We want to leave most of our activities for either kickboxing, dance, or cooperative games, okay? So generally speaking, we want to perform each activity with minimal equipment, okay? We don't have a lot of equipment, so that's why we're doing kickboxing, dance, and a cooperative game as opposed to something like soccer, okay? Or basketball or softball. We don't have that equipment for this camp. So you have to think, how am I going to be able to teach these exercises? What exercises am I actually going to teach? So you have to think of some breathing exercises, maybe 2 or 3, stretching exercises, maybe 3, 4, or 5, some motor or balance exercises, either 2 or 3 of those. The dynamic stretching, include up to 10 of those. So that's something like skipping, jumping, hopping. It could be side shuffles. So those things you can do plenty of. Any type of locomotor skills you can do. With music, of course, you want to have during the warm-up if you can. Then into our kickboxing. So you're learning the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4, and then your front kick and side kick. Okay, so you want to first teach them the 1, or your jab, then your cross, your uppercut is your 3, your hook is your 4. Okay, you can also do knees, you can do front kicks, and you can do side kicks. Okay, so however you want to teach that. If you want to do a 10-minute kickboxing plan, that'd be fine. If you only want to do 5 minutes because you want to spend a little bit more time on dance, you can do that as well. If you just want to keep it even, just do about 10 minutes of kickboxing. Don't want to do more than 10 minutes of activities. 1, because we want to make sure they get a break, and 2, because it's good to have a change of direction and structure. After about 10 minutes, people start getting bored, okay, or disinterested. Not everyone's going to like kickboxing. Not everybody's going to like dance. Not everybody's going to like the warm-up. Not everyone's going to like the cooperative games. That's why you have to have different options. Okay. So if somebody's interested in dance, you can motivate them and say, hey, let's get through this kickboxing, and dance is going to be fun. Okay. Now dance, we talked about freeze dance, and you can do a teacher instructed, or you can lead a dance, or a teacher led dance. So you can show them a move, an actual dance. Maybe you're teaching them some patterns or maybe a 4-step process. And then you have them go over that 4-step process on their own, and you actually teach a full dance class. Okay, so that's up to you on how you want to teach that. You could also teach the freeze dance for 5 minutes, and then maybe you could add in the YMCA, the Cupid Shuffle, something like that. If you've never taught dance before and you want to keep it simple. Okay, for cooperative game, this is where you have to use a resource for sure, or you have to find something on pecentral.org. They do a good job, and just telling them you only have cones, mats, and radio as our equipment. Okay, that's all the equipment we have. And if that's all that, we got, let's just say we got 50 cones, we got 30 mats, and we got 1 radio. Okay, so, if you got 20 students, and you only got 50 cones, that means that each student could have, 2 cones each if you're going to do an activity where everyone needed 2 cones. And making sure that you're also accounting for the mentor too. So if there's, 5 mentors and 15 mentees, what are the mentors going to be doing during these tasks or activities? Are they going to be leading 3 individuals? Are they going to be helping with a cooperative game somehow? So you have to think of how all this is going to occur, how it's going to look like in structure. Okay, so the cooperative game, I talked about red light, green light. I talked about sharks and minnows. And also construction destruction. Okay, those are all games that you can play with no equipment, basically. So red light, green light, it's just a stop and go. You say red light, everyone stops. Green light, they walk or they roll. And then yellow light, they balance. And so you can do that for 3 minutes. And then you could play something like sharks and minnows, where all the sharks, or one shark's in the middle of the gym, all the minnows have to run down to the other side without being tagged. And then you could play something like construction destruction, where you lay out all the cones all over the gym, and they have to knock, one side of the gym has to knock the cones down, the other side of the gym or other group has to pick the cones up. And so it's a game of just trying to pick up the cones and knock them down. So that's what you could do in a cooperative game setting. You have to think of what games people teach at camps with limited equipment when you don't have, tons of basketballs or equipment. So what could you do? If you wanted to do something with the mats, something fun, or like a maze with the mats, or something with the cones, like an obstacle course with the cones, or getting students to group up, create an obstacle course with 5 cones or 10 cones, whatever it is, use zigzag or curve patterns, use all the locomotor skills we've performed in our dynamic warm-up, tying in the exercises that they can do, having them, maybe perhaps create their own gymnastic or kickboxing or dance routine as a cooperative activity. So that's really up to you and how you want to teach that. So making sure that all of this is incorporated in your adaptive physical activity lesson planning for the equipment, only cones, mats, and a radio. Okay. And so next, what we're going to talk about is how to structure your lesson plan. So after your set induction, warm up, kickboxing, dance, cooperative discussion board discussion, what you're going to do is you're going to have some type of assessment or closure. Okay, so asking them questions about what they learned, maybe asking them certain cues about specific move, like ask them like, all right, tell me what movement this is, and they might say jab. Okay, and so give me a thumbs up if you think it's a jab. Okay, what was this? Okay, raise your hand if you think that is a cross, and I might show them again, this is my 2, what is this called? I might say, is it called a cross? Raise your hand if you think it's a cross. They might raise their hand, that type of thing. So any type of discussion and closure you can have with them is always going to be a good thing. Now, if you're just teaching kickboxing, or if you're just teaching dance, or if you're just teaching cooperative game, okay, you might not be leading the discussion or the set induction. Okay, so don't worry about those things if you happen to be in the middle here teaching an activity. All right, I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to teach at least one activity, but your job for this lesson plan is to create a full lesson plan, okay, 60 minutes using this guide with minimal equipment, okay, and then you're also going to complete each task in the lesson plan. Okay, and you'll see it'll say task 1. Okay, you'll describe the activity. Okay, you'll have some extensions for the activity. Okay, you'll have refinements for the activity. And then you'll have any type of IEP or modifications for that activity for people that utilize wheelchairs. Okay, and then any type of assessment, if you have one for that activity. So whether you're rating them on their cooperation or their ability to perform a certain movement, or if you want them to, at the end of the lesson, maybe you want them to be able to list a cue from that exercise, that's when you would add that part to your lesson. So each of these components will be in each task that you present. So you have your warm-up, kickboxing, dance, cooperative games, discussion. So you have set induction, which is by itself, I believe. Then you have task 1, which would be your warm-up. I think it's your warm-up, and then task 1 would be your kickboxing, task 2 would be dance, task 3 would be your cooperative game. In each task, you'll describe all these different types of well, first you'll describe what you're teaching, okay, how they're going to learn it, what are the cues. Okay, you also write in the cues in the column for the lesson plan as well. Extensions, okay, any type of progression for the exercise. So whether you're going to add in a layer, maybe you're adding in an obstacle, maybe you're adding in a new activity that progresses. So if you're going from throwing with a partner, or sorry, if you don't have equipment, you can't do that. So if you're going from a zigzag pattern, maybe you're adding a zigzag to a curve pattern. Okay, so you're adding a new extension to your previous task. Okay, then refinements, any type of pointers that you would suggest to that individual while they're performing the task. And then IEP modifications, what can people that utilize wheelchairs can do for that exercise or activity. And then any type of assessment that you want them to understand, whether it's psychomotor, affective, or cognitive. Okay, so each task you'll describe how you're going to teach the task. You'll have any extensions. Okay, for example, if you were to teach dance, the extensions would be to progress a movement pattern. So if you were to perform a 4-step movement pattern, that would be extension. So you'd be learning the first pathway or step pattern, and then the second, and then the third, and the fourth, and then you put it all together. So those would be all extensions. When it comes to something like kickboxing, it's adding in different combos. So maybe just starting with the 1-2, the 30-second extension would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to perform a 1, 2, 3, 4 with a knee and a knee. And so those would be the extensions of kickboxing. Okay, so each exercise will have extensions that progress, that help you stay on task and on time. Okay, so each exercise, like I said, 15 to 25 minutes for the breathing, stretching, motor control, balance, and dynamic stretching. You'll have to look online if you've never taken a yoga class before, or if you've never seen a stretching class or mobility class. There's lots of videos that I have resources for that you can see. And then also you'll just have to learn about the different types of stretching. So you want to stretch out their quads, their hips, their shoulders, their spine, that type of thing. Motor control and balance, things like trying to balance on one leg or on one hand and one knee in the sunbird position. Okay, dynamic stretching, things like locomotor skills. Okay, and then we have our kickboxing, dance, cooperative game, and discussion closure. Okay, so it's your goal to create a lesson plan using this format. Okay, making sure each task has a description, extension, refinement, IEP modification, assessment. In the columns next to it, I think you'll have cues. I think you'll have an organization. So you'll have to show how the students are organized and how the teacher is going to be. So if it is kickboxing, you'll want the students in front of you like that. So you're just showing what the organization looks like. If it's sharks and minnows, you would have to draw out, you can take a picture of it, draw it on a whiteboard, take a picture of it, and just draw out what it's going to look like, maybe some arrows where the students are going, maybe an S for shark, so that you understand that sharks are over here, minnows are over here, they're going that way. Maybe you add the cones that you're going to use for the organization or cooperative game. So you have an organizational chart, and then you also add in any standards that you apply. So if that was standard 1.3, you know, that will go with that task right there. And your standards are all aligned nationally and statewide. So making sure that your student learning outcomes meet those standards, and that your assessments are tied to those student learning outcomes. So whatever you want them to learn or be able to perform by the end of the lesson. So for their cognitive domain, we'll talk about that. Their cognitive domain, you want them to be able to maybe tell you what's the best form of breathing. Is it through your nose or through your mouth? So that would be one cognitive student learning outcome for the day. For an affective learning outcome for the obstacle course or cooperative game or sharks and minnows, maybe it's that they keep their hands and arms to themselves and they stay away from others when they're running. So keeping distance and keeping making sure they're playing safe. So being really safe during sharks and minnows. Is it a 3, 2, or 1 level? Rate yourself on how well you think you cooperated during sharks and minnows. Talk to them before sharks and minnows about safety and how you are grading them on safety. And then for psychomotor, there's tons of skills, right? So, I mean, they're going to be doing kickboxing, they're going to be doing dance, cooperative games, they're going to be stretching. There's so many things you can list off, but try to be just specific with, you know, or generalized, you know, some statements. You're going to work on mobility training, breathing, you know, dynamic movements, that type of thing. And then try to think of one student learning outcome that you can assess or measure. So whether that's maybe we want to see if they can perform the freeze dance in front of others, you know, and whether they're able to perform their own movement pattern. And so, yes, they are. What movement pattern was it? You know, maybe ask them to talk about that movement pattern, what they like about that movement pattern. So that would be affective domain, also cognitive domain, plus they're showing you that movement pattern. So bringing that all together and then getting them to be able to express themselves with their dance patterns, okay? Or it could be you want them to show you their kickboxing routine, okay? Or you want them to show you some warm-up exercises that they performed and making sure that they're able to perform them with the right technique, okay? So that's why it's really important to understand the cues and for them to understand the cues when lesson planning. All right, so This is adaptive physical activity lesson planning with minimal equipment. Okay, if you have lots of equipment, obviously I would probably just add kickboxing to my dynamic stretching or dance to my dynamic stretching. Task 3 and 4 and 5 would probably be clumped together as either one sport like soccer. Okay, so we're going to start with just some skills where we're just going to do some toe taps, or maybe we're going to pretend that we're the goalie and manipulating the ball with our hands, because I know people that utilize wheelchairs are going to want to do some goalie exercises, right? So if I'm teaching soccer, I might just start with 10 minutes of skills that everyone can perform. Then I might do 10 minutes of partner activities, and then I'll do 10 minutes of group game. Okay, and then I'll end it and have a discussion after the class is over. Okay, if I'm doing football, it'd be similar. If I'm doing badminton, it'd be similar. Every skills that people can do for 10 minutes, skills that people can do together for 10 minutes, and then some type of group game for 10 minutes. So that's how I organize sport. Now, when I organize fitness, I try to organize fitness same way here. Okay, same warm up. So I'm always going to keep this warm up regardless if I'm teaching fitness or sport. Okay, and if I'm teaching fitness, then I'm going to go into more strength training, so upper and lower body training and core training. I would either have stations or I would do it in a group training style. For all soccer, for any sport or fitness activity that you teach, you can teach for 30 minutes in this section here. You can do stations or you can do group. Okay, so you can either do stations or group, and this is for minimal equipment as well. You can always have stations, so you could have kickboxing station, a dance station, some obstacle course station, some cooperative game station if you wanted to really have a lot to do, because that would be a lot of planning and a lot of you coordinating that. But if you can do that, go ahead and do that. You can do things in a station manner or in a group manner for any exercise or any activity that we teach. I like group exercises because a lot of times we don't know who's going to show up. We don't know how many people are going to be there. So it's good to have everyone in a group. That way we can make sure that I can see everyone as the lead teacher. But once the program gets underway and I see how everybody is doing, sometimes the next lesson I might do station work if I know everyone's skill set. That way I can curtail each station to everyone's disability. Or I do that in a group setting. So there's two different ways you can teach, and that's in a group setting or in a what am I thinking of? Group setting. Oh my gosh. Group setting and S. I'm having a blank here. Help me. I'm gonna get it. Group setting and delete this one.